Hi. The time sure flies by when you're having fun, and I am. And hopefully you are too. Either way, let's check more of the games from 2001 on Windows together. Tropico is a fantastic management/simulation game that places you in comfortable flip-flops of El Presidente of a small fictional Caribbean island country of, well, Tropico. While the simulation aspects of the game are very solid, it is also chock full of humor, and leading a banana republic has hardly ever been as much fun. And it's a combination of these two, so well-crafted gameplay loop and humor that will keep you glued to the screen for hours on end. Your job theoretically is very simple here, and it's to take the small island nation to, well, and it's up to you really, if you want it to become a prosperous economic superpower or a dictatorship carefully crafted to shower you with endless rain of money while keeping your population on the verge of starvation. You know, fun. Naturally, life is not all black and white, and you can balance your and your country's needs to land anywhere on the spectrum between these two extremes, and it's really up to you to decide the Tropico's future. Upon starting the game, you can choose a background for your ruler from a set of available few, and these have both positive and negative effects on your gameplay. Clearly, it requires a certain know-how and a few games under your belt to be able to pick the best for each possible gameplay strategy, but even if you're new to the game, it's fun to try them all out. Keeping your citizens happy obviously requires providing them with various services, so stuff like churches, cathedrals, clinics, hospitals, pubs, restaurants, cabarets, police stations and over 70 more others. Yes, Tropico is that big. And yes, it's not complicated, despite what it may sound like, and the game is paced perfectly, and you get to slowly learn everything that there is about it. While there are elections happening periodically, and you may theoretically lose them, and hence the game too, you should not worry too much. Because you know, democracy is a fragile lady to dance with, and some unsanctioned dance moves are always allowed on the political dance floor, meaning that there are no elections that couldn't be rigged ever so slightly, naturally in your favor. Such actions may bear serious consequences if anyone notices, but as in most dancing competitions, dissident contestants can also be dealt with using carefully picked earlier issued edicts. These, however, are not there only to deal with difficult individuals, but also cover tax, diplomatic and individual issues. All in all, Tropico is a living and breathing organism of a game where changing one thing influences many others, and they are all tightly intertwined with one another. It's an amusing and very absorbing title that fans of games like SimCity or different business simulations, especially those with humorous aspects and solid management backbone, will no doubt fall in love with. The desert-like Nevada waste, bottle of whiskey in one hand, gun in another, pushing towards the nearest town's saloon. Well, actually I wouldn't. But I'm not the best example, and I'm sure that many others would. Desperados Wanted Dead or Alive is a top-down isometric real-time tactics game, or a puzzler. Depends how you wanna look at it. The simplest way to explain what it is, though, is to say that it's a commandos game in a Wild West western setting. You play as John Cooper and his 5 hardy companions. The game starts with your group hunting a notorious train robber, El Diablo, to claim the bounty on his head, and then evolves into your group being blamed for the crime they did not commit. Having escaped the law, you will have to find who framed you and bring them to justice, be it real one, or one taking place when you bullet and the responsible party's forehead meet. Doing so, however, will take you through 25 handcrafted and brilliantly executed missions. Each of them is a puzzle of its own, with clearly laid out objectives, John and few of his companions set to complete it, and you left in charge of it all. What's best about Desperados, other than each of your buddies having their unique skills and scenarios that they are best used in, is that unlike Commandos, many of the objectives can be completed in more than one way. You can sneak around and try to do things quiet, sure, but setting up an ambush or a shootout is not the wrong tactic at all if used right and at the correct time. The atmosphere, the story and the cinematics of Desperados are just fantastic. The game seems to draw from the years of western movies and books in heaps and translates their setting, art and tales to the video gaming medium perfectly. I mean, every stage appears like a tiny diorama of a movie set, down to the most minute details, with all the bandits, animals, buildings or even decorative objects taken straight from the era, and you get to play around in them. Naturally, same as in Commandos, it's all about completing the tasks that the game throws at you by figuring out one of the correct solutions to the multi-screen puzzle. And you do it by utilizing the skills of your aforementioned buddies and by observing the enemy's behavior, patrol routes and their field of view. Interestingly enough, all of the buddies behave differently. Some are angry, some are courageous, and there are those who are cowards too. It makes for a very unique feeling of each gunfight and keeps Desperados entertaining all throughout. While Wild West may not be my absolute favorite setting for either movies or games, that would be sci-fi or post-apo, I do actually prefer it to the World War, so I always found Desperados to be more satisfying experience than any of the Commandos games. I think that it's only natural to follow up old-timey themes with futuristic and sci-fi. And Star Trek Away Team is just that. Well, other than being based on a fantastic series of many different TV shows and some notable movies too. Many of you know how I feel about Star Trek, and those that don't will after the next sentence or two. I love Star Trek to bits for everything that it represents, mainly for its depiction of the absolute best that humanity is theoretically capable of, and for its constant drive for equality, freedoms, understanding, and that it is very science-centric. So while perhaps the game that we're to talk about today is not the best depiction of these values, as it features a lot of combat, so something that while present in the TV series was always the last measure, it still is hella playable and fun top-down isometric real-time strategy tactics. Yes, you've guessed it, it's another of those Commandos-like games. After the events of the Dominion War depicted in the Deep Space Nine series, Starfleet realized that not everything can be resolved peacefully and that some difficult situations may require a use of scalpel-like precision to cut through the enemy to complete certain crucial tasks. So a special covert task force was created and given USS Incursion, a new and fast ship equipped with holographic masking system, allowing it to disguise itself to look as any other known ship model in the universe. Which on a side note is an interesting way to find a loophole in the Treaty of Algeron that prevented Federation from using cloaking devices. The team is composed out of 17 best Federation operatives and sent only on the most daring and demanding assignments. They are basically like Section 31, but not autonomous and still answering to the Federation officials. Now, I realize that all this may sound like mambo-jumbo to those not versed with Star Trek universe, but all you really need to know is that there are special units sent to do what regular Federation quote-unquote armies can't. So the USS Incursion is sent to investigate a group known as the Wardens and the work of Klingon scientists. Soon into the game, however, they uncover a plot that threatens the entire known galaxy. And guess who's gonna have to lead them to victory? Yeah, it's you. Each mission has a set of goals to complete, and to do so you must pick members for your away team, keeping their unique stats and special skills in mind. Most major Star Trek races are represented in the game, so when making a choice, you always have to keep that in mind, as some of them may be naturally more capable of doing well in a particular scenario. You obviously have to guide the team through the enemy field maps, completing your objectives, avoiding detection and getting rid of all the bodies that you can. Enemies not only have their view range, but can also hear you, so staying stealthy and smart is more often than not a key to success. If you're a fan of Star Trek and games like Commandos or Desperados even, chances are you may enjoy Away Team a lot. But if you're not, then the small nuisances like a rather disappointing enemy AI or mixed bug graphics may put you away from this otherwise pretty fun game. No, you have not spent too much time in the holodecks and you're not having holo hallucinations. There are really 2 Star Trek games in this video, and yes, only 2, I'm not making a Star Trek special out of this one. So, Star Trek Armada 2, as it's easy to guess by a big shiny M2 right there in the name, is the follow-up to the first one and a real-time strategy set in the world of the best sci-fi universe to date. Yeah, I know what I said, and yeah, I'm standing by it. Feel free to contest that statement in the comments below if you know one that's better. Anyway, Armada 2 is set 6 months after the events of the first game during the Next Generation series era and depicts conflict between the Federation and its allies against Borg, who've actually managed to create a new type of a ship capable of assimilating entire worlds in mere seconds. Given the threat being deadlier than ever, Federation launches investigation on how Borg managed to get so far so fast, and as per usual, never failing in what he sets out to do, Captain Jean-Luc Picard is the one who discovers a new type of nebula, one being a transwarp gate capable of sending entire fleets between Alpha and Delta quadrants. That second naturally being the operational center of the Borg. So Federation pulls all their resources to jump into the heart of the Borg Empire and mount a counter-offensive to cripple the Borg at their knees, so to speak. As much as the kneecap attack somehow managed to be successful, it also caused a transwarp portal to collapse and some of the Federation forces stranded on the uncharted and unfriendly waters. I mean, in cold and dark depths of the Borg space. The game comes with 3 built-in campaigns, one for Federation, one for the Klingon Empire, and one that ends with assimilation of all other species as the resistance is naturally futile. I mean Borg, one for Borg. There are quite a few changes to the original base set of features, and Armada 2 comes with 2 new races playable, Cardassians and Species 847-2. There are also 45 new ship classes and 22 new special weapons, and a whole manner of space stations and natural phenomena not present in the first title. 2 new resources of metal and latinum are added, and that second is naturally of no use to the Borg. I mean, it could be argued that it should be of no use to Federation either, but I'm not gonna be sitting here splitting hair when I could be telling you about this game. Interestingly enough, the new Species 8472 offers entirely different gameplay mode, as it turns the traditional RTS mechanics upside down. So they are organisms birthed by a singular quote-unquote mother creature, and then they evolve into different ships and stations. They care very little for resources too, but construction of its units takes more time. Additionally, for whatever the reason, Borg are unable to assimilate this new species, which makes for a very interesting what-if scenarios. I mean, if you're someone who likes to play those out in your imagination, that is. To summarize, if you're a fan of Star Trek or RTSS, you'll probably enjoy Armada 2's gameplay and presentation, as it's mostly lore accurate and sexy looking. But if you don't like them both, or either, it's probably not the game for you. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 2 is a 3D third-person action-adventure and a direct follow-up to the previous title. The protagonist vampire-turned-wraith, Raziel, is still seeking to exact revenge on Kain, his former master and also his murderer. As the game progresses, however, and he learns more and more about his past and the land of Nosgoth, traveling through time, his objective switches into desire of freedom. Especially that it seems that the history of Nosgoth and all that live in it are predestined and unchangeable, and that Raziel is the only paradoxical being living outside of these rules and capable of influencing his own timeline and altering the history that he touches. The developers wanted Soul Reaver 2 to be more of a cinematic experience than the earlier one, so the game is more streamlined and linear, but also more involving and polished because of that. It is also a bit less replayable, as if you complete it once, it will never surprise you with anything, but I suppose that's the price that had to be paid for the experience to end up being the way that it was. Soul Reaver 2 naturally kept the switching between the real and spectral worlds mechanics and its use in traversal, storytelling and puzzling alike. Staying in the real, material world still requires Raziel to drain souls of his enemies, but given the sheer number of these, it should not really be too big of an issue on his quest. All 3D platforming abilities made their way back to the second game, so he can still climb, jump, swim, grip and glide, and the attacks that he performs can be barehanded, use his claws or a plethora of different weapons like daggers, swords or axes, to name a few. He can also fire bolts of telekinetic energy, and overall, the action-packed hack-and-slash combat system is fun to learn and use, and even features amusing, if I can call them that, finishing moves. Raziel also has numerous skills at his disposal, mastering of which is required to complete the game. Puzzles are a definite highlight of the game, as they're not only numerous but also rather fun and varied, often requiring you to either operate different devices, blocks or reflect light beams using mirrors and shiny objects. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 2 is a fantastic game to go through once, as you will not only fall in love with its story, preferably after playing earlier games first, but also have a lot of fun with its combat and puzzles. Going through it again is not something I would recommend unless split with a few years of other gaming experiences. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon is a first-person squad-based tactical shooter set in the future of 2018 Moscow. Yep, you heard that right, I said future. Anyway, it seems that Russian rebels have taken over the city in an attempt to restore the old communist regime and recreate the former Soviet Union. In response, the United States sends the Ghost, an elite military team, to deal with the situation. First, to take a direct part in combat, later on to help with rescuing and evacuation of US nationals and VIP allies. Now, let me start by saying that Ghost Recon is very hard. Like really, really hard. And if you think that you can just jump in guns blazing and carry on completing stages like you would in any other regular shooter, you're in a hell of a surprise. Like a stray bullet to the gut or a sniper shot in the forehead surprise. In Ghost Recon, you have to be ultra careful, plan ahead and expect the unexpected. From time to time, even the Spanish Inquisition. You're in control of a squad of soldiers and unlock new specialists along your progress in the campaign. Specialists, as in regular soldiers, only quote-unquote leveled up. You start with a few riflemen, heavy weapons support, snipers and demolitionists, each described with 4 stats of weapon skill, endurance, stealth and leadership. And these skills are initially very low. But with each completed mission, all of the soldiers that took part in it and survived, I believe it's worth mentioning that they do have to survive, get 2 points to increase the stats. You may have noticed some similarities between Ghost Recon and earlier Rainbow Six, and good, cause they kinda are. But there's also a lot that divides them. For one, Ghost Recon is not focused on singular buildings and hostage rescue missions, but takes place on large open maps that may consist of multiple buildings and war-adjacent objectives. Secondly, there is virtually no pre-planning in Ghost Recon, and all the squad orders are issued in real time during combat. Thirdly, there is no custom gearing in Ghost Recon, and each class of soldiers has 4 pre-made gear packages, from which you can pick one. You can take a maximum of 6 troops on every mission and divide them in up to 3 firing squads. Ghost Recon's story is not its strongest suit. In fact, it's so thin that unless you read and listen to everything at all times, you may actually miss it. But, and that's probably the most important thing about it, it's largely irrelevant, as you'll be too invested in playing to even notice the story being there in the first place. I mean, provided that you like shooters, and especially those tactical ones. Cause if you do, this one should definitely be something down your alley. I know that it may seem from these videos of mine that I've seen or played all the video games to ever grace the PC, but that's not really the case whatsoever. I've played a lot, I mean a lot, and I have seen many more games even, but it's still far off from everything. And the further we go on a PC gaming timeline, the more prominent it becomes as the more and more games kept releasing each year, and still do. Battle Realms is one of those games that I've not played. I mean, I knew of it and may have even seen a buddy of mine playing a stage or two when I came over back in the day, but I've literally zero experience with it myself. Just like with being a multi-millionaire. I've seen a few, know a couple of them actually too, and yes, I mean my bosses, so the devil and her demonic husband, but I've no experience with having a lot of money myself at all. It must be fun. And so must be Battle Realms, but all I will tell you about it today is all that I found about it online. Keep that in mind. So Battle Realms is a real-time strategy inspired by the Japanese mythology and history. The game tells a tale of Kenji, the last heir to the Serpent Throne, and his struggles to lead his clan to greatness. Battle Realms is about different clans that represent different kind of values, each with their own motivations, and the conflict between them is what the game will focus on. Interestingly enough, unlike in most other RTSs, in Battle Realms you don't produce units at all. Your peasants, so the most basic units, are created automatically at a pace dependent on the current size of your army, as in inverse to its size to be precise. Wow, I'm a poet and don't know it. Anyway, the peasants are used for everything to keep your settlement running, so they gather resources and construct buildings. And, well, and that's another of those unique Battle Realms' mechanics, they are also trained into combat units in the military buildings. So yeah, you've heard that right. You do not produce armies in military buildings, they are there to convert peasants into armies. It's an unusual approach to the genre and one that I gotta say I would appreciate if I played the game, as it directly intertwines how well economically your country is doing with the strength of your army. What's more, the units can be additionally trained in special buildings to become so-called battle gears, so stronger versions of basic units with clearly defined roles on the battlefield. Since we're on the units, they also gain yin-yang points from battle, as in either yin or yang, depending if they're good or bad in their alignment, and this can be used to summon either hero units or Zen masters, or even used in some of the buildings in your base. Battle Realms is clearly one of the most unique RTSs of its time, and while I'm not really a fan of the genre, it looks really interesting, and I can see myself at least giving it a chance. So maybe you should too. Clive Barker's Undying is a mystery horror-themed first-person shooter. The game is set in 1923 in and around the Covenant family mansion and the island that it's on, and few other rather otherworldly locations too. The mansion is haunted by the long-dead Covenant family members and other dark and evil creatures. The last living member, Jeremiah Covenant, on his deathbed, slowly dying from cancer, in the last-ditch effort to lift the family curse, calls upon his old friend, Patrick Galloway. Patrick is a professional whiskey drinker, 3 times world champion single malt consumer, and world-renowned bourbon connoisseur. Also likes any foods that include potatoes. Go figure. Most importantly, however, he is also a part of a former paranormal squad that Jeremiah was into. The squad fought weird metaphysical creatures and specialized in abolishing them from our plane of existence. You are naturally in control of Patrick, and using a plethora of weapons and magic, or rather your mystical forces, you have to find a way to cleanse the house and learn what caused it to become as haunted as it is. As you go through the game, you will naturally find numerous papers, books and family heirlooms that may direct you on your path, and all of these, along with the few people still living on the island, will be base upon which you will begin to understand what's at play in the Covenant Mansion, and the puzzles will begin to form the story behind it. And trust me, it's a hell of a story, like literally hell, with the Undying King aiming to enter our world and wanting to claim it as its own. It's worth pointing out that Undying ends on a cliffhanger, suggesting a follow-up to come, which as we know now, never really materialized. If you're into horror-themed games, this one's exceptional, and you should definitely not overlook it as it's worth your time and back then money too. Empire Earth is a real-time strategy that at the time of its release was unlike anything else, because in theory it covers the entire over 500,000 years of human history split into 14 unique epochs, beginning with the prehistoric and ending with the futuristic Nano Age. The game's lead designer Rick Goodman was the one responsible for the earlier hit Age of Empires, and if you've played that game and liked it, you'll love Empire Earth. What's more, you'll be able to jump in and start playing without having to familiarize yourself with any of the controls, as they are near carbon copies of one another. I mean, it could be argued that most RTSs of the time were, but these two go a step beyond the industry average. Unlike the Age of Empires, though, Empire Earth uses a full 3D engine and adds a lot of new and unique features, like the Morales system or hero units to name a few. The game is divided into 4 campaigns, each of them set in a different time period, so you'll be conquering the Mediterranean as the Greeks, you'll take the English from the Middle Ages all the way to the Battle of Waterloo, and hopefully will win it too. You lead the Germany to win both world wars, because why the hell not? I mean, that's why we have games for, to explore numerous what-if scenarios, and you'll be tasked with recreating a Russian empire in the 2025, which is incredibly ironic if you keep in mind what's happening in the real world now. All of these campaigns are split into scripted and often very fun, and not always focusing on the traditional trifecta of RTS missions. These are usually set at a very precise time frame, so you can't advance through all 14 epochs while going through them. In the skirmish mode or multiplayer, however, starting in the prehistoric era and going through all of them is naturally possible, and if I'm to be honest, probably the best way to experience the game. Oh, and so that we're clear, the RTS trifecta I mentioned is obviously base building, resource gathering and armies production. You know, what 95% of RTSs is based on. Anyway, each next epoch brings in new technologies, buildings and units, but you lose the ability to form the older ones, even if all of them stay active in the game until they're destroyed or killed. There are 21 civilizations in Empire Earth, and all of them have their own strong and weak sides, and usually an era that they're most effective in. These are, in no particular order, Greece, Assyrian Empire, Babylon, Byzantine Rome, Carthage, Israel, Austria, England, Franks, Italy, Ottoman Empire, Spain, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, Russia, United States, China and rebel forces. And if you've counted less than 21, it's cause Italy comes in 2 flavors, as a monarchy earlier on and a democratic country later. Not all of them are available at once, and some can be only played after certain eras. Empire Earth was a huge hit, and no wonder, it was a truly fantastic game that captured the imaginations of millions and provided countless hours of fun to any and all RTS fans. Now, let the fact that I played it, even if not a lot, be the best testament to its quality, as I'm definitely not an RTS gamer. The simplest way of describing Ricochet Xtreme would be to say that it was a modern, for 2001 version of Arkanoid or Breakout. But if I would leave it like that, it would be like saying that Warblade is just Galaga clone. And we all know that it's way more than that. Well, I do, and the 7 of you who actually played the best shoot 'em up on PC know that too. Anyway, Ricochet Xtreme is one of the most unique brick-breaking games out there. It is composed out of a whopping 170 levels and redefines the genre from ground up. Not only it features spectacular for the game that it is graphics, but also a stellar sound design. There are tons of explosions, fireballs and different projectiles on screen, often at the same time, and all are accompanied by appropriately meaty sound design. While in theory, same as all Arkanoid-like games, all you have to do to complete the stage is remove all blocks, Ricochet focuses a lot on the triggering systems, as in having built into the bricks layout wait to destroy all or most of them in a one-swoop chain, so finding a brick that would ignite the chain and allow you to complete the level faster. It's not as straightforward as locating an explosive block only, as it's rarely so simple, and to find some of the hidden shortcuts a use of various power-ups may be necessary. And there are tons of these, active and passive. So you may encounter shield, ion spheres, lasers, missiles, fireballs, ray balls and many more. And figuring out which hidden in the bricks upgrade is the best to beat a particular level fast is a part of the fun of Ricochet. It's not only bonuses though, as some pickups are naturally penalties, and learning which are which and what to avoid is a key to success. While I don't play this daily, and only dabble in my Arkanoid-like games from time to time, Ricochet Xtreme is easily one of the best ever made and as fun today as it was in 2001. But most importantly, it's a game with literally thousands of additional unofficial level packs made by the fans available to download online. So, if you've gone through both the X-Ball games and a few classics more times than you could count and know all of them by heart, Ricochet may be the best answer to that brick-breaking itch, as it can offer you more levels to beat than you would ever manage to in your entire life. So, what do you think of 2001 so far? While I'm enjoying working on the videos, I can't decide where I'd place the year on the list of the best in classic Windows gaming. Maybe you can. Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.